Hi, welcome back to Madness and Meaning. I'm really actually excited about this topic today. I think it's a little bit different from what we've done in the past. What we're going to be talking about today and exploring and diving into is the way that when we start to undergo personal transformation, when we start to do the deeper inner work and we start to peel back layers of who we are and kind of address the parts of ourselves that we've been running from and avoiding for so long, our thoughts, belief systems, and general wants and desires can sometimes shift and change. And a byproduct of this is that we start to want different things in our life and seek out different people, different experiences, and different circumstances than we found ourselves wanting or surrounded by previously. And this shift in desire can feel sometimes a little surprising if you don't expect it or if it kind of catches you off guard where the things that used to make you happy and that used to fulfill you no longer do. And so today we're going to be kind of diving into what that can look like, why that happens, and how to navigate that newfound desire for newness that sometimes comes up for us inside of the transformational process.
Yeah, and I think at least my experience of this, but I think maybe this is just a common way that we all get initiated into this experience where our desires change and everything that we think that we want for our lives starts to completely unravel before us is as we're getting into personal development or doing the inner work or going through a spiritual awakening, whatever we want to call it, we're sort of prompted in one way or another to inquire deeper into the things that we think that we want. So we all sort of started out with these similar desires, like we want to have a good body or like to have a better body, or we want to have more money, or we want to have more work-life balance, or to travel more, or whatever it is. Maybe there are some differences, but I think in general we have some similarities with all of those basic desires. And when we begin looking more closely at these things, we begin connecting with what the deeper desire behind those external accomplishments really are. So, for example, we want to have a better body because we want to stop feeling so insecure and comparing ourselves to everyone so that we can have more inner peace. That's really ultimately what the deeper desire of that is. Or because we think that by having a better body, it will make us more lovable, because deep down we really crave a deeper connection and deeper love. And with money, we might say that we want to have more money because we think that having a higher number in the bank account is going to give us the security that we need to feel at peace or to rid us of the anxiety that we feel. Or we think that it will validate that we have our lives together if we have more money in the banks, that we feel significant. We feel like someone that our parents can be proud of or whatever. And a funny realization I think we all come to at some point is that most of the time, our efforts of trying to achieve that external goal that we thought was going to bring us that deeper desire, whether it was more love, more connection, more security, more peace, happiness, whatever it is, the efforts that we're taking to achieve it are actually the very thing getting in the way of us having that. And so, for example, like this is where I first discovered this paradox is when it came to trying to change my body into what I thought my body was supposed to look like in order for me to feel at peace with myself or to feel confident in myself. Um, but the actual effort of trying to control my body through controlling food and hyper fixating on my body, hyper fixating on the progress I was making or not making, and also isolating myself from different relationships so that I could perform all the work I needed to do in order to control my body was obviously getting in the way of me feeling that peace, that confidence, that security, that connection that I deeply craved that I thought was going to innately come by me having the quote unquote body. And with money, I think that can look like this is the time where I reference Kyle Cease like I do in every episode. But
Hey, Kyle.
hey, Kyle. He always talks about when money is our source of security, or we perceive money being our source of security, then it isn't going to matter how much money we have. We're going to be afraid of losing that money because it's the source of our safety, of our security. And so that very relationship with money, where we're trying to feel more secure, we're trying to feel less stressed, or we're trying to feel at peace with ourselves through money, is never actually going to be a peaceful relationship, because you're always going to feel like you're constantly under threat of losing it. And so the very effort of trying to gain more money to feel more at peace or to feel more secure is the very thing pushing away the peace and the security that you were going after in the first place.
So, what you're saying is throughout the process of doing the transformation work, all of this starts to become more conscious, and you start to realize what you've been doing all this time through these desires you've been having and these means of accessing the feelings you've been wanting to feel. And you start to witness that one, it's not working, or two, it's creating a large degree of discomfort. And then you start to learn how to access the feeling in a different way that you're using these other means to go about previously. And then what tends to happen is that these things that you used to want or used to surround yourself with, or the means through which you were going about accessing the desired feeling, no longer feel resonant for you with this new level of awareness.
Yeah, there's this like crossroads that we come to where, and I think for a lot of us, we end up still going down the same path for a while. It's like, I
Yeah.
know that me trying to change my body isn't making me feel any better, but I'm gonna keep doing it anyways.
Yeah.
Or I feel like I understand and I know better than to make making money my number one priority, but like I don't really know how to go about it any other way. Like I don't know how
Right.
to feel secure in my life without putting all of my energy and focus that I can into making more money or whatever. And so we almost have to keep perpetuating the lesson a few times over and over and over until we get a little bit fed up with our own shit and realize this isn't actually how I want to be living my life at all, and it's not working. And for me, it just kind of came to this place of like it is just blatantly not working. I almost feel like I don't have a choice but to go another direction, because if I keep heading down this path, I'm not going to end up making more money. I'm going to be stressed out. I'm going to be, whatever, or I'm still not going to like myself. I'm still going to feel insecure in my body no matter how much effort I put into it. And all of these consequences that I've already recognized come with my pursuit of trying to control these things are still going to be there. So it took me a while, and I would say years, to get to the
Yeah.
point where I saw it and I was like, okay, let me pivot. Let me do something different about it. But I think a lot of us can also resonate with the, okay, this isn't working, but now what? Like, how else am I supposed to go about this? And that's a big question that obviously is very nuanced, is going to be very situationally dependent. But I think a good place to start with all of this is when we recognize what our deeper desire really is. What is that thing that we were trying to achieve through these external means that we now have recognized are not working or actually getting in the way? And then what are the other things that we are actively contributing to in our lives that are still pushing away that deeper desire or blocking us from experiencing it now, so that we can have kind of like a tangible point of, I need to start releasing these things, releasing these patterns, releasing these belief systems, and start living out of a new way that is going to at least put me in a foundation where this deeper desire that I have is going to feel more accessible where I'm at right now.
I want to ground this in with a specific example for me so that it's really clear what this can look like and what we're talking about in a tangible way. And for me, I always go back to exercise because for, I would say like 25 years, 15 hard years, all I wanted was to kill myself in the gym. And if I wasn't killing myself, it was a waste of my time. And I would berate myself over it. The workouts had to be hard, they had to be long, they had to be intense, and I had to be making markedly large jumps in improvement. And if you had asked myself at that time, exercise allowed me to feel powerful. It allowed me to feel capable. It allowed me to feel strong. It allowed me to feel confident. It allowed me to feel knowledgeable. It also gave me this sense of feeling better than when I saw other people that couldn't do what I could do.
Mhm.
And the reason why I loved going to the gym is because it allowed me to access those feelings that I didn't have the ability to access otherwise. That was just my doorway in at the time. And through working with Kelly, through doing my own personal development work, my own inner work, I started to learn how to access those feelings outside of the gym. And I started to feel them innately. I just feel powerful all the time, not when I'm lifting 350 pounds, just all the time, regardless of what I'm doing. And so the need to push myself to that degree started to dissipate. And I started to feel this like feeling
Mhm.
with the gym where I didn't before. And my desire to go to the gym just started going away. And now it's kind of gone. I do work out 4 days a week, but they're short, they're quick, they're easy, and I definitely don't want to be working hard.
Yeah,
And so
agreed.
that has completely shifted and changed. And a lot of people that I grew up with still don't understand that I'm not into that stuff anymore. And so they always ask me, like, how's your training going? How's your workout going? And I tell them I'm not really working out anymore and I don't like it. And they're shocked.
Of course.
But this is what tends to happen when we start to access those parts of ourselves that we have been suppressing for so long and using certain relationships or certain circumstances as our doorway in. Our desires change. What we look to for a sense of fulfillment changes. And I do think that there's some discomfort associated with just the prospect and idea of change itself. And I would
Mhm.
love to explore why that is.
Yeah. Can we also explore a little bit more closely the intricacies of how you were able to start accessing that power beyond the
Oh,
gym?
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people are going to hear that and go, like, this does, like, going to the gym, killing myself in the gym, or working super hard in my career and staying extra late and being like the hardest working person in the office does give me this feeling that I want. And I see that there are negative consequences of me approaching it that way, but I don't really want to give it up and I don't know how to access it another way.
Well, that's
And I
different
think, yeah,
because I didn't want to
okay.
give it up. And then suddenly I just did. I didn't see it coming
Mm,
until it was there. And
it was organic.
sometimes you're not told in advance that your interests will change, and suddenly they just do. And that's what happened to me. I just hated. I was training for nationals and I couldn't wait for it to be over so that I wouldn't have to do it anymore. And then COVID happened and nationals got postponed and I was faced with, oh my God, I have to do this for another year.
Mm,
And there was this part of me that didn't want to give it up because of, and then we can get into that because of the
yeah,
stories I was telling myself. But there was a part of me that was just so over it because I wanted something different for myself. But we can definitely dive into what that process entails.
yeah. Because I definitely had a similar process when it came to giving up personal training
Yeah,
as
same
well.
for me as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like the mind couldn't fathom not wanting it anymore because it was everything that I thought that I wanted for so long, and I could justify it till the cows came home. I love that saying.
And you have to shake your head as you say it.
You do. Absolutely. Um, but there was just this unignorable like dread that I think you also are describing here when it came to training for nationals, where it's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And it was so weird to be in that place and hard to trust it, for
Yeah.
me at least. Yeah. So when it came to experiencing that like innate shift where you just kind of had this awakening of this thing that I thought that I wanted, I don't want anymore, how did you begin to create those feelings that that thing gave you so that you could move forward in a way that was actually more what you did want while still giving you that deeper desire.
It was a multifaceted, multi-layered process that took place over the course of 6 months to a year. And so I'm just putting that out there that this is not a linear, short-term thing. Evolution of the self is constantly happening and it's very slow and gradual. And so I came to Kelly with the desire to help me with my business. I was already undergoing a shift internally where the nutrition coaching that I was doing at that point wasn't feeling right. I was feeling so aggravated by it. I think that's a sign. Feeling aggravated, feeling frustrated, feeling bored, feeling anxious. Like these heavy feelings start to come in where you didn't necessarily have them before because that activity used to allow you to feel something new. And so the work that Kelly started to do with me was drastically different than I thought we were. I thought she was going to like be like, here's your business plan. Here's how you get the business that you want. Like let's strategize and like here's how you're going to launch it and here's how you're going to get all your clients and like I
Nope.
was like, oh, and what we did was there was no business plan, there was no strategizing. It was very much anchoring into what are you afraid of? Why haven't you done this yet? You're telling me that this is something that you want, but then you're coming up with all these reasons why you can't do it yet, why it's not going to work, why you're not clear. And so there was all of this confusion, lack of clarity, fear that I was feeling in terms of not the not knowingness that I came to her needing help with, where she was able to reflect back to me, you actually do know all the answers. There's fear blocking you from moving in that direction. And so I think that for me, parts work was a huge factor where I learned how to speak from the different parts of myself that we are taught and told to not do. And I've noticed
Mhm.
this in my clients where I ask them to speak from the part that feels frustrated or what are all the things you're frustrated about? And they're like, you want me to tell you what I'm frustrated about? I'm like, yeah, share it with me because that feels wrong to do.
It does.
And so I started voicing what I was afraid of, voicing what I was frustrated about, what I was mad about. And there's a part of that that we feel like we're not supposed to do. We're supposed to just be positive all the time.
Mm.
But when you push how you're feeling away, it exacerbates the very thing that we're talking about. And so speaking from those parts and showing love and compassion to those parts where I wasn't before, and then doing a whole bunch of work after that. But I feel like I want to give you a chance to step in here because there's a lot involved.
Yeah. I mean, parts work is the most, maybe I shouldn't say most, but I think one of the most powerful tools that we have in the tool belt to be able to move in a different direction because oftentimes what keeps us stuck is that parts of ourself are being rejected and then they just kind of rebel. And so a lot of the
Yes.
time when we have these fears, these doubts, these frustration points against the thing that we say that we want to move towards, we think the way of overcoming that is, like you said, just ignoring it, not acknowledging that that's there, just pushing it away
Get
and
over
thinking
it.
positive, getting
Yeah,
over
just get over it. Yeah.
100%. But when we're getting over it, quote unquote, we're really just suppressing it and it's not going away. It's just becoming more unconscious. And then that's going to pull the strings of our lives even more. It's going to show up in the way that we're behaving, the things that we're saying we're going to do that we're not actually doing, the effort that we're actually putting into it, and just all we're not going to be firing on all cylinders whatsoever, and we're going to be getting in our own way. And so it feels counterintuitive in a way to allow these parts of ourself that are misaligned, quote unquote, with the thing that we want to actually have space to be seen and heard and expressed. But allowing those parts of us to have a seat in the vehicle that we're trying to move in a different direction with is going to allow them to kind of settle versus them fighting over the steering wheel with us in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the misconception is that, well, if I voice all of my stress frustration, I'll get lost in it. It's not about voicing it without a way to hold it in a compassionate way. So it's learning how to feel love for those parts, where those parts don't, they feel rejected, they feel shamed. And when you learn how to do that and you start doing it regularly, as a byproduct, you start to feel more love
Hmm. You're
and
more whole.
more whole. Exactly. It's like I have this weird analogy in my head. It's like taking like a shattered bowl and gluing all the pieces back together. It's kind of like that, where all of your parts are scattered everywhere because, oh, that one makes me look stupid. Oh, that one makes me look um, sound not funny. Oh, that one makes me look weak. And so you push them away and pretend that they're not there. And you just like brush them under the sink so that nobody
Mhm.
sees them. Well, through this work, you go and you actually collect them, you look at them. Oh, there it is. There's that piece. There's that piece I've been trying to pretend doesn't exist. And you start to glue them all back together so that you have this beautiful new you, which feels more loving because you're no
Mhm.
longer rejecting those parts. And what happens as a byproduct of that is that you feel all those things. I can only speak for myself. I started to feel more powerful. I started to feel more capable. I started to feel more confident. And where I used to kill myself in the gym trying to feel those things, I started to feel them when I was doing that inner work with Kelly and when I was doing my homework from our sessions together. And I started to realize how, yes, the gym allowed me to access a degree of confidence and inner strength and power, but there was a lot more there too. There was a lot of self loathing.
Yeah. Do you want to talk more on that?
I feel like these sessions are my own personal coaching session with Kelly because I start to relive it and she's just like, tell me more.
Tell me more, sweetheart.
Yeah.
And this would maybe be a beautiful practice of learning how to also demonstrate how you can hold these parts of you with compassion as well. Thanks.
Oh my God, she's so good. Um, so I started to realize, sorry, I started to realize, I'm just want to finish my point. I started to realize that when I would do my inner work with Kelly or the homework with Kelly, there was real, like, unconditional love and compassion there. Whereas when I was using the gym to access it, it wasn't unconditional. It was very, very conditional. And so I started to see the dissonance between the two. And so it stopped feeling good in the gym.
Hmm.
It only felt painful.
Yes.
And that's where my desire to go about it that way and to use the gym in that way to beat myself down in order to feel more powerful as a result,
Right.
it
Yeah.
stopped working.
Yeah. Yeah. You realize almost that what you were labeling as power and confidence was just like a justification in your own head that maybe you deserved it because you completed this workout in a way.
Yes. I mean, it's very nuanced because I did feel very powerful, like like mid
Yeah.
dumbbell. I'm like dumbbell rowing in my seat, or like deadlifting 3 times my body weight felt amazing. But there was a lot of pain and suffering leading up to that one moment where I pulled the weight off the floor.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I put the weight back down, it was like, well, 375.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even enjoy the win
Right.
until I was on to the next one. And so coming back to the topic for today, once you navigate this with or without a coach, I always say I could never have done this on my own. I just wouldn't have known how. Your desires start to change because you start to feel that like conflict between what used to allow you to access whatever feeling it was that you were desiring to feel and what it's like to access it freely and unconditionally. And this can create a desire for newness, whether that be searching for new experiences or recognizing that the people in your life no longer feel resonant for you. And this can oftentimes lead to this feeling of like feeling lost because a part of your identity was wrapped up in whatever you were doing previously. And now that part of you is sort of dying. And there's this feeling of where do I go from here? Where does this leave me? I want something different. I don't know what I want. I don't know anything else. And there's fear associated with that sense of change and newness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's also something to be said around how a lot of these desires that we had were coming from this very wounded place as well, which I think is noteworthy because, like, for example, with the desire to feel powerful, feel confident, feel good about ourselves through the pursuit of working really hard and having the body and being really strong and whatever it is, usually that desire was birthed from this place of because if I don't achieve this thing or I don't become something different than what I am already, I'm not good enough. I'm
Right.
not worthy of love and I can't love myself. I'm not deserving of loving myself. If I did love myself how I am, other people would probably disagree with me because I'm not meeting XYZ standard. I can't justify why I should feel confident or why I should love myself based on this criteria that I've been conditioned into my entire life that says to be a good person or to be a valuable person, I need to meet this criteria. And so when we are approaching our our efforts from that place of I have this desire because if I don't achieve it, then that means something bad about me. I think that just inherently sets us up for a journey where we're going to have to eventually pivot because we're never going to get where we wanted to go when that is the desire that we created and that's the place that it was created from.
That's a really good point. I I was using the gym to access these feelings, but they were so fleeting. So
Yeah.
I never really got there, or I got there under very conditional circumstances. And so at some point, I probably would have gotten completely frustrated or kind of fallen into a deep pit of despair at some point and desire to pivot because there's only so long that you can operate under that stress of things not working in the way that you want them to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the stress becomes less and less tolerable the more you kind of expose yourself to the world of personal development and spirituality, and you
Yeah,
start to almost like access a higher perspective of things. Because there certainly are people that go their entire lives just kind of living in this like incessant misery in a way where they're always trying to reach something, but they never really get there and they're stressing themselves out to get there and they beat themselves up. But like that's just kind of the reality that they live in and they don't really know any better. But I think once the seed is planted, that there's more available
oh yeah,
where we can start to access more inner peace. We can learn how to love ourselves. We can feel worthy, even knowing what that means, feeling worthy, knowing that there is a duality of there's an experience of feeling unworthy and there's an experience of feeling worthy and what that can really look and feel like. then knowing that there's something else available almost like pulls us towards it in a way, maybe slowly because we'll be very hesitant towards it, I think, for a long
Sure.
time. But once the seed is planted, I think it just inevitably continues to sprout.
Yeah, there's like a decreased tolerance for like the self-inflicted wounding, the self-inflicted uh like badgering, where you're like, I don't need this bullshit
Yes.
anymore because I have seen that there's another way and I've felt what that feels like and it feels so much better. And I can't handle this anymore.
Hmm. That's right. Yeah. And then it almost like the heavier it gets, the more like it starts to feel kind of urgent, I think, at some point where and I'm curious your perspective on this because to me it kind of feels like there is sort of in some of us, maybe all of us, I don't know, there's kind of this like destined, this is meant to wake us up and we're meant to wake up beyond this in this human lifetime. And that's why we've had these experiences. And of course, we can get into like, there is no right or wrong way of living this life. And you don't have to, we've already talked about this in previous episodes where it's like, you might come here with some lessons to learn, but also like, if you don't learn them, that's fine too. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But
Yeah.
I think that there has been like, just this inevitability to it for me. And I think for you too, and for a lot of people, where it's like so obvious to me that I was meant to not live my life that way. And I was meant to live it for a period of time, but it was going to keep getting more unbearable and more uncomfortable until I pivoted.
Oh, it's happening on a global scale.
Absolutely.
It's going to continue happening. The systems that we have been operating under can't sustain this new level of awareness.
Right.
Something that I would love to touch on is the grieving process inside of this desire for newness,
Hmm.
where you recognize that you want something new, but letting go of what you were have been doing up until now, the way you've been operating, the people you've been surrounded by, feels like you're losing something. Like it
Hmm.
feels like you're losing a friend or a relative.
It does. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of different ways that we could try to explain why that feels so incredibly painful. I think to put it very simply, we can perceive it as like this is just a part of ourselves that is having to die in order to step into something different. Like if we have identified a certain way for so long, like I am someone who is going to lose all the weight and get the body or have the body and be powerful and like impress everyone in the gym and whatever. Stepping away from that, not only is it losing, like it's getting rid of something that we have identified with, but it's also getting rid of something that we have felt we've has met our needs. Like we feel significant, we feel important, we feel good enough, we feel like that has given us love and connection in our life. It's given us some sense of certainty around who we are, where our life is going to go, etc. And so to change the desire and change the approach that we're taking in our lives is it is going to feel like a grief because we're sort of grieving that version of ourselves that we had believed was who we are, which is a big part of the spiritual awakening is just letting go of all of these things that aren't really who we are that we've identified with.
I love that you just said that. I think that people don't realize that the transformational process is quite a heavy one. There's levity on the other side of it, but the reason why it feels heavy at certain points in time is because you are shedding all of this stuff that you were holding on to that you identified as you, that you now see is not you. And in letting it go, it frees you up to more possibility, more potential. And there's fear in that because for the first time, you are less limited by your own narrowed perspective of who you are and what's possible for you. So you see more that's available and it feels overwhelming. So you can feel lost, when you're not actually lost, you're just seeing more of your potential.
Yeah.
But
You were
there's a
more lost before you saw the potential. It just didn't feel
Yeah,
lost.
it feels a little bit overwhelming at first when all of a sudden you're like, I don't know where to go from here.
Mhm.
And that takes time. You can't rush that process, and you're not supposed to know. Sometimes you have to sit inside of the not knowing as you recalibrate. There's a recalibration process here that I don't think is well understood, where sometimes as you're shedding these old parts of you, you have to grieve their loss, the loss of the identity that kind of held you stuck to them, that you no longer feel is resonant for you. And as you're grieving the loss of that, you're looking at all of this like new open potential and possibility and all of these new avenues, and it can feel overwhelming. So you're grieving and you're overwhelmed and you're feeling lost and you're feeling alone and you don't know where to go next and who to talk to about it. And it's all of those thoughts associated with the process that start to create this sense of dread inside of this newness that you're craving. But
Yeah,
over time, with compassion, which is always the answer,
always.
love and compassion for you as you're moving through this, clarity, the clouds will part and clarity will come, and you'll feel pulled to move in a certain direction that feels light, that feels exciting. But I think that when you can approach this process of looking at all of the new avenues that you could possibly pivot rather than thinking about it in terms of I have to figure this out,
Mhm.
which tends to be where we focus our attention. If you can shift that to how can I explore what this feels like and create
Mhm.
more of a game out of it and or an exploratory process out of it, it can feel lighter, it can feel more fun because it kind of is.
It
You're
is.
allowing yourself to be and to do in a way you didn't allow yourself to before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's allowed to feel scary and anxious, but I think when we can separate from the experience of the anxiety and the stress and the fear of not knowing what's next. And we can just almost just see that as like an innate response to something that's unfamiliar, an innate response to something that's unknown, because the mind just likes to project fear onto what it doesn't know. Anything that's unfamiliar is going to feel unsafe. And when we can remind ourselves of that, then we're able to hold it in this broader container of and I'm moving towards something that feels really right. This step that I'm taking away from this and towards something different, like there is a knowing deep inside of me that that is the step for me, that that is going to lead me somewhere. And I think we all have that innate knowing when we're coming to this place. We might doubt it. We might fear, what if I'm making the wrong choice in certain situations? I think we might have an expression of doubt in different ways, but that can exist within the container of, and there's a deeper knowing that I have around this. And I would also like to speak to this experience of when we are moving in a different direction, when we've identified the direction that we've been going, the desire that we thought that we had, that we were trying to create with all of these different modalities, but it wasn't working. Um, when you were speaking to kind of being in this place of lostness, because we're not really knowing exactly what to replace that old desire with
Right.
yet. I want to speak to the experience of, because I think a lot of us will kind of hold off making steps until we have some level of certainty or an idea around what it could be replaced with. And I've definitely been in that position when it came to letting go of personal training. I don't know if I ever would have done it had I not had the idea of, well, if I stop training people in person, I can work more fully on having an online business. And at the time, I thought it was going to be like online fitness and nutrition coach. Now, obviously, that's not how it ended up turning out to be. But I'll call it an illusion of certainty around what was going to replace the personal training with, I think gave me the courage to actually go through it. And I think we can allow ourselves to indulge in that a bit, um, with awareness and with consciousness. Like if we feel like we want to move a different direction because the desires that we had, we just don't resonate with anymore, but we're still not fully sure what it is that we want, then pick something even. Just try it on and see what that's like to start moving towards it, or just give yourself something that feels tangible enough that is going to kind of move you in a direction. Then obviously life is just going to take you from there. You can't be attached to what it is that you think is going to be the replacement of your old desire, because there's no way of you knowing at this point. But I think that there's also something that can be really useful and beautiful about just having something that our human mind can grasp onto in that process of the uncertainty.
But why don't we?
Why don't we what?
Why do we feel like we have to wait until we I have noticed inside of myself this very big push pull between this feeling guiding me somewhere, having no idea where it's taking me, and my mind fighting back, saying, I need to understand it. I need to figure it out. And so until I can understand it and figure it out, inaction feels best. I don't know yet.
Yeah,
I haven't figured it out yet. So why does that tend to be why does that tend to feel more comfortable than what you're suggesting, which is just try something, head in a certain direction, just see what it feels like?
I think that the mind just likes to have some level of certainty, even though it's always an illusion of certainty. But and and what you've just described, I think you and I have at least had an experience close to that in recent years, as we've gone through the process enough times of just being like, I have a feeling about this, and I don't know what it really means or where it's leading me, but I'm going to follow it anyways, because we've been able to just, it's like we've learned how to play the game on expert level through all of the experiences that we've had
Yeah.
of riding the bike with the training wheels and giving ourselves the illusion of certainty and safety through this thing that wasn't actually going to give it to us, but we thought that it would, and we went with it anyway. And I think that we can just meet ourselves where we're at with all of that. There definitely does become a place where we've just played the game enough, and we know that when there's this feeling that says, don't do this anymore, go in a different direction, and you have no idea what that different direction is, but there's like a next step available to you, whether it's let go of this, or look into this, or try doing this a few times a week or whatever it is. That next step is always available to us, even if it doesn't have any clear direction of where it's taking us. And then when we have that first step, you and I are at a place where we can kind of just trust to take it because we've gone through it enough times to know that's going to lead us somewhere positive. And if someone is in a position where they haven't quite built that level of trust with life and with themselves yet, that's also okay too. There's going to be ways that you can learn how to just take a step forward, even if that step forward is just admitting to yourself that where you're currently at isn't where you want to be in the future.
I think that there's also this extreme discomfort inside of feeling um n- feeling unprepared, feeling not good, feeling like you're not playing on expert level. Like if we're talking about saying goodbye to relationships that no longer feel like a good fit for you. Now you have to go out and make new friendships. And all of your insecurities and your doubts and your fears around that surface. What if they don't like me? What if I can't find new friends? Who am I going to hang out with? What if I'm feeling lonely all the time? How long am I going to go before I can create a new friendship? And on
Mm,
and on and on it goes. If you're looking about a different career opportunity. Well, what if I'm not qualified? What if I don't know enough? What if I make a mistake? What if I can't make as much money? And on and on and on it goes. If it's a new hobby, it's like this discomfort inside of being a beginner
mhm.
that a lot of us have not felt for a really long time. Like,
Yes.
think about it. I'm 37 years old. I just turned 37.
Mm,
Um, before my spiritual awakening, I had been doing the same work for 20 years. It had been a really long time before I tried something new and was a beginner at it. And so I had been living my life without this sense of this like shaky, unconfident version of myself. And all of a sudden, I started to do practice readings for people, and I felt so uncomfortable as a beginner. And I think that that comes into play too, where you're waiting for this sense of quote unquote certainty, but sometimes it's a very subtle way of avoiding this discomfort of feeling like a fish out of water.
Hmm.
What do you have to say about that? And if you don't agree, I'm
Hmm.
totally open to that.
No, I do agree. I just was so lost in listening that I wasn't coming up with my own way of talking about it. So I'm
I
a
think
bit
that
thrown
that's
off guard.
definitely like that definitely plays a part too. And I think that again, this comes back to compassion. There's something very
Absolutely.
scary about feeling like you're not good at something. And
Yes,
what does that really mean? I'm not worthy. Comes back to that. I don't feel
always.
worthy of the love that I want to feel. I feel more lovable and more open to feeling loved from myself, feeling validated when I feel good at something, when I feel like people know me, when I feel
Right.
comfortable inside of the relationships. Because they've been formulated over the course of a long time, and meeting someone new feels uncomfortable. I have to be more
Totally.
vulnerable. So
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
requires time and a lot of compassion.
Hmm. And I think on that note, I would love to offer just the idea to explore of yes, all of that is totally fair and totally relevant. It makes perfect sense why all of that feels uncomfortable. And can you also just get excited about who you would be if you faced that? Like, if that was no longer what held you back, but like you just became the type of person that was totally okay with doing things that were new, totally okay with being a beginner, totally okay with not being the best person in the room. Like, what about that would feel exciting? Is there something that feels freeing about that? Is there something that is a quality maybe that you also admire in other people that you would like to take on? Because the mind likes to catastrophize it as like a very justifiable reason not to do it, and that's fair enough. But also, like, there are reasons why you would want to do it too.
Yeah, I do think, and this is something that my guides brought forward, is we can oftentimes ask ourselves this question of like, who am I now? Like
Mm.
who is this version of me? Who am I? I knew who I was. I don't know who I am anymore. And that's a very loaded question. So can we change the question and ask something different? Can it be, who can I be? Who do
Mm-hmm.
I want to be? Or how can I feel differently? Or how can I feel at ease inside of discovering who I am now? And it's this levity of the discovery process that I think when we can put more emphasis on that, takes away this pressure to get it right or to show up in a certain way that we feel would allow us to feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
The discomfort is ultimately what you're seeking. You're not seeking comfort because we've touched on this before, but there's something oddly dissatisfying about feeling comfortable all the time. And
Yeah,
if you really sit down and think about it, you're constantly putting yourself in discomfort all the
always.
time. You're
Yeah.
telling yourself you're not good enough. You're telling
Mm.
yourself you have to work harder. You're telling yourself you don't have everything that you need yet. That's very uncomfortable to put all that pressure on yourself. And so you love
Yeah.
feeling uncomfortable. You're just familiar with that frame of discomfort.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's a
Yeah.
really interesting observation that I just made.
I 100% agree. We don't actually want to be comfortable. Just want to be in a familiar discomfort.
Yeah. Ultimately, when you're tired, when the discomfort that you're currently experiencing is less painful, sorry, is more painful than the potential new discomfort that you would be feeling, that's when you start to move in that direction. And
Mhm.
sometimes that pivot point is very high.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's just what's required in order to get that boost of momentum.
totally. Yeah. Which I think is just a great point of continuing to offer ourselves grace in this process of when we are trying to figure out what's next for us, what we want, what we don't want, etc. When we start to get that little niggling of like, I think I want something different than what I thought I wanted. Like just that initial like
Yeah.
little niggle in our mind, in our body that's like, something's not right here. There is this inherent sense of urgency, I think we all attach to it, where it's like, I got to do something about it now. I got to figure out what it is. I got to figure out what it's not. I got to take action on it. And then I think that that pressure and that urgency then paralyzes us, ironically,
Yeah.
because it just feels so like intimidating to go down that path. But I want to just highlight that just acknowledging that you want something different for your life is already a huge step in that direction. And I would even say, and I can say this maybe just from my own experience, and you can try this on and see if this feels true for you too, or if it could be, but it kind of feels like my I or my ego has never actually orchestrated any of the change that has happened in my life. I've never had to really do anything to move in a different direction. It kind of just organically happened, and either my ego was able to go, I did that and take credit for it, or I can just say, whatever, change has happened. And I think that trying that on and choosing to experience my life in that way has taken a lot of the pressure off of myself to just allow things to organically unfold. And obviously, we're going to be presented with opportunities, things that we can try, things that we can stop doing, things that we can do differently. And ultimately, it is our choice, I guess, to do them or to not do them. But there's also just something I think innately inside of us that's just going to say yes to what's right and no to what's not. And we can trust that.
There's going to be this weird, like, inspired feeling. And sometimes you have to be inside of the I don't know what's next space before that comes in and just allow that to be what it is. It's the most uncomfortable space in the entire face of the earth. I've been
Yep.
there a few times, I know. You have to trust that it's coming. And it's very interesting to think about where that's coming from. And when it comes in, it's not necessarily the end point, like the be all and end all, because there might be another one after that and another one after that. And it's guiding you like little breadcrumbs somewhere. And the biggest component to this is trusting that the next little burst of inspiration is coming and that you don't have to figure it out on the mental level, that intuitively you're being guided somewhere. There's an energetic component here. And I think
Mhm.
that that's the biggest thing that gets me tripped up is I feel like I have to see where it's leading me, like I have to understand it on a logical level. You're
Right.
not gonna.
Nope.
And that just takes a lot of surrender and time and observation to see it that way. And I also want to just add in there that sometimes we hold on to what we want to leave behind because it's not finished yet. I didn't
Hmm.
tie it together yet. I didn't finish it. I didn't accomplish. I have to just get it done and then I can feel good walking away. I want to challenge if that's necessarily true. If the whole reason behind what's driving this is coming from a sense of lack. If getting the thing at the end of that road is really going to make the difference for you, or if you're really just putting off how you really want to feel, which is fulfilled, might be coming from walking away and not from winning nationals and then walking away.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's oftentimes, again, coming back to what I said in the very beginning, it's that pursuit of that thing that we think we need to finish is what's actually making it harder to finish. It's making it harder to get that thing that we were trying to get in the first place. And so, and we can have grace for ourselves and our stubbornness too. But I think that what I would love to offer as like a way to tie that beautiful piece that you just offered is that, okay, if we can recognize that we're doing that, we can recognize that we are telling ourselves that this needs to be complete. I need to just get there before I can walk away. Just analyze that. Acknowledge what about that is actually true. Where is maybe some misunderstandings laced around that? And then make a decision from a more conscious place rather than just falling asleep in this statement of, I can't walk away until I get there. I don't want to walk away until I finish this or I complete this. Investigate it, try to fully understand where that's coming from. And then if you from that place still decide, but I still want to do my last competition, or I still want to get promoted at work before I leave the job, or whatever it is, I still want to reach my weight loss goal before I start working on having a better relationship with myself, then do it from a more conscious place rather than just unconsciously falling asleep inside of that.
Really quickly, before we tie this up in a bow, I would love to hear your perspective on how you would help guide a client that's seeing that they're craving something different, but perhaps they're in a relationship with a partner that doesn't see things that way, or that feels uncomfortable with this new direction that they're taking, or a friend group, or a parent, or a guardian, someone in their life that's feeling uncomfortable with this new direction.
Yeah. There's a few different things that I would want to weave into the process for that person if I was working with them as a client. A big part of this, I think, would just being able to depersonalize from that other person's resistance and perspective on what they want to do, what person one wants to do, and person two being the person that's creating the resistance or not in agreement with them. And so, what that really looks like is coming to an understanding of and really finding compassion for why person two is having a level of resistance and discomfort around that. And not to take that on as your personal responsibility, but just to see it with compassion. Because I think what we tend to do unconsciously is this person in my life that's really important to me is not okay with me doing this. And it's my responsibility to make sure that they are okay with the things that I do. Therefore, I either need to convince them to be okay with it or I need to not do it. And those are kind of the two choices that we see are available to us because we think that without either of those choices, it's not okay, it's wrong. Everyone needs to be in agreement with me. If they're not, then I'm a bad person or I'm doing something bad or making the wrong choice or making other people uncomfortable and that means something bad about me or whatever it is. So depersonalizing from that really looks like allowing someone else to have their experience, having compassion for maybe why they have that experience. And we can find that through just an exploration, maybe even having a conversation with them, or just analyzing the information that we already have about that person that would help us understand why the thing that we want to do might feel threatening to them, whether it's because we know this about their childhood, or we know maybe what stories they would be telling themselves about it, or that we see the identity that they hold themselves to that would feel this thing that I want to do would feel like a threat to that identity. And I think that's going to allow us to be in a place where we can make clearer decisions that are going to be in alignment with us and the other person rather than just folding into convincing or people pleasing. Um, I think also a big part of this is learning how to um, actually communicate with that person because I think a lot of it is we're making assumptions a lot of the time, or we've gotten bits of information from that person. Maybe we tried having a conversation and it was shut down, and then we just kind of went, they're not okay with it, right? And rather than using that little bit of information to try to figure out, okay, what are my choices? I need to leave that person, or I need to convince them, or I need to give up on this dream. Those are the three choices that we see we have. It's like, no, let me not make a decision from this very limited amount of information that I have. Let me actually try to have a real conversation and multiple conversations with this person to try to understand them better, to try to understand myself better, and what it is that I actually really want from this and why this is important to me, and to communicate with them about that. And then see where you end up landing with them from that place. And then ultimately, where you go from there is going to be very dependent on where you land. But I think those are kind of the first two places that you need to focus on.
Love that. Ultimately, as you are embarking on your personal development, spiritual journey, you might want to dye your hair purple at some point. You might want to change your entire life, and that's normal. That's part of the process.
Yes, and we love that.
Is there anything else you want to add to this today?
I don't think so.
Thank you all so much for listening. Like, subscribe, leave us a review, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.